Hi everyone, it's Rachel, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how to make your very own waffle cone ice cream charms using polymer clay. It's super fun to create these designs because the colors and toppings can be changed up to suit your own style and also make the flavors that you want. I do have two other videos in this little ice cream charm series, including one with some simpler designs, so if you are a beginner, I suggest that you check out that video first, which I'll leave linked down below in the description box. So starting off with the actual waffle cones, I'm going to be using this vanilla colored clay. I'm taking my clay rolling pin and I'm rolling the clay down on my work surface to make a flat sheet. To create the waffle cone texture, I like to use the square kind of texture on a plastic plate. To avoid your polymer clay sticking to your rolling pin or plastic plate, if that's what you're going to be using for the texture, go ahead and take some corn flour or cornstarch and rub this over the surface of your clay. I then placed it onto my plate, and then you can take your rolling pin and roll this down to get the texture onto the clay. Now take a circular cookie cutter and press this into your polymer clay and pull away any excess. Next, it's time to add some shading to our vanilla colored clay to make it look a little bit more golden and like a real waffle cone. So I'm using a fluffy paintbrush and a mixture of brown chalk pastels, which I have just shaved into this little cup, and I'm slightly dusting this over top of the clay. Using my long blade, I'm then actually going to cut the circle into quarters. Now we want to shape our clay into a cone. I'm taking my piping tip and I'm wrapping one piece of the circle around the very end and pressing the sides together to secure them. If you do happen to lose any color from touching or manipulating the clay, you can then just brush on some more of the chalk pastel shavings. Now gently remove the cone from your piping tip, and you can continue the same process with the other pieces of clay as well to create more waffle cones. Once I finished my batch of cones, I'm then placing them onto my baking tray lined with a sheet of baking paper, and I'm baking these in my oven just for 5 minutes to harden the clay a little, which will make it much easier to add the ice cream and the details to the cones. To create all my ice cream in this video, I'm going to be pushing my clay through my piping tip, which is a Wilton number 16, a star tip. But if you don't have a piping tip that you can use with polymer clay, I do have a tutorial on how to make a polymer clay frosting, which I have linked down below if you would like to check it out. So to start off, we have design number 1, which is a mint chocolate flavor. Begin by taking some light green polymer clay that you can use for the ice cream and make sure that it's conditioned really well so that it is nice and soft to work with. Roll it into a rough cone kind of shape and then coat the surface of the clay with some corn flour, and this will prevent the polymer clay from sticking to the sides of the piping tip. So drop your clay into the piping tip, and then you can use a large ball tool to push the clay through until you have enough to create your swirl of ice cream. Use a blade to trim off the section of clay, and then here I am taking some Sculpey Bacon Bond liquid clay, and I'm just applying this into the middle of my cone so that I can add in a scrap piece of clay. The Sculpey Bacon Bond helps to adhere the raw clay to the baked clay. This step is completely optional, but I do find that adding some clay inside the cone gives me a nice structure to wrap my ice cream around, and of course it can be scrap clay because it's not going to be seen at the end anyway. So as you can see, I added some more Sculpey Bacon Bond to help attach on the ice cream, and then I'm just swirling this around the design until I get to the very top and I'm able to create a little bit of a point. I always start my swirl of ice cream around at the back of my charm design where the waffle cone was connected together, and that way you won't see it from the front. I cut off the excess clay when I got to the very top of the ice cream, and then I just pinched it gently to create a nice peak. Next, I'm moving on to creating the chocolate sauce to drip down the cone. So again, I'm taking some more of my Sculpey Bake & Bond liquid clay, which I do prefer because it is a thicker liquid clay and it allows me to control the drips more. I'm adding a small amount of this onto a sheet of paper, and then I'm placing in a small ball of brown clay and combining this all together. I found that the colour wasn't quite dark enough for what I was after, so I did add in some dark brown and black chalk pastel shavings, and I mixed these in as well so that I could achieve a nice dark chocolate brown colour. When I was happy with the consistency, I then used my needle tool to apply the chocolate sauce to the charm and to help me carefully control the drips going down the sides. I'm now moving on to making the little biscuit or cookie to add to the design. So it is supposed to resemble an Oreo, but I'm personally not very good at making super small, realistic details. So this is a very simplified version of an Oreo. So I flattened down 2 pieces of black clay and 1 thinner piece of white clay, and then I'm simply stacking these on top of one of the other to create the Oreo. To add some kind of texture, I'm taking a toothbrush and I'm just gently patting the bristles all over the clay. I'm using a dotting tool to create a little indent where I can place in the Oreo biscuit, and then I'm just positioning this onto the charm. To give the design a little bit more of a minty feel, I have taken these 2 small teardrops of green polymer clay, and I'm going to be creating some mint leaves. So I placed an indent down the center of each one, and again, I'm just attaching these onto the charm. To finish off the choc mint ice cream design, here I have some pre-baked brown polymer clay, which I have cut up into tiny little pieces, and I'm attaching these all over the ice cream as chocolate chips and also securing them down with some liquid clay just to make sure that they stay in place. So once I was happy with the design, I then added an eye pin in the top to make it into a charm, and I'll be showing you at the end of the video, once I've completed all the designs, how I baked them and finished them off. Moving on, we have design number 2, which is inspired by Lotus Biscoff biscuits, which if you've never tried before, you definitely should. To create the color of the ice cream on this one, I am mixing white polymer clay with a caramel brown color just to soften the color slightly. Again, I rolled this clay into a cone kind of shape, and then I'm applying some corn flour all over the surface so that it doesn't stick to my piping tip. I placed the clay inside the piping tip and pushed it through with my large ball tool, and then I cut off the section that I needed. Here I'm applying some of my liquid clay into the cone and adding some scrap clay, which will give me a structure that I can wrap my ice cream around. I attached the end of the ice cream at the back of the charm design so that it won't be seen from the front, and continued to wrap and swirl it all the way around until I was able to create a nice looking peak at the top. To create the Biscoff sauce, it is a similar process to my chocolate sauce on the last design. I started off with some Sculpey Bake & Bond on a sheet of paper, and then I added in a small ball of caramel coloured polymer clay, which I then mixed in to create a nice thick sauce consistency. I used my needle tool to drip this all over the top of the ice cream, and I also created some drips running down the side as well. Again, for the biscuits, we're going for quite a simple design, and of course I'm trying to make some little Lotus Biscoff biscuits. I took my caramel coloured polymer clay and I'm shaping it into little rectangles on my work surface, and then to add some texture, I'm patting the clay with a toothbrush. I then positioned these two biscuits together on my work surface, and I trimmed the bottom part off so that I had a flat surface to work with. Then I could easily add these designs to the charm, and I set them in the sauce, which would help to keep them nice and secure after baking as well. I felt that this design still needed something a little more, so here I'm taking some cream coloured micro marbles and I'm just placing these all around in the sauce to act as some sprinkles. Go ahead and add an eye pin if you would like to make your design into a charm, and then I will show you how I baked my ice cream at the end of the video. Moving on to design number 3, we have a mango inspired ice cream, or I guess it could be a sorbet. To create the color of the ice cream, I'm taking these 3 balls of polymer clay. One is a light orange, one is more of a vibrant yellow, and the other is a translucent white. As you can see, I rolled each of the balls of clay into a coil, and then here I'm just wrapping them all together so that they almost kind of look like a marshmallow. My aim here was to marble and swirl the clay around so that when I pushed it through the piping tip, it would have some really nice swirls. Although, as you've probably seen from the end product, that didn't really go to plan. I shaped my polymer clay into a cone so that it would nicely fit inside my piping tip, and then here I'm covering the surface with some corn flour so that it doesn't stick to the sides. Push your clay through the end of your piping tip with one of your tools, and then you can cut off the section that you're going to be working with. Like my other designs, I'm adding some liquid clay inside the cone to attach a piece of scrap clay, and this will give me a nice structure to wrap my ice cream around. As you can see from the color of the ice cream, all 3 colors actually ended up just blending together rather than creating a swirl. For the topping on this ice cream, I obviously wanted to create some little mango pieces. So here I am mixing some of that vibrant yellowy orange color with a larger piece of translucent polymer clay. Once you have a color that you are happy with, roll this clay down on your work surface with a rolling pin or a similar tool, and then create some small cubes by cutting the clay with a blade. I then evenly spread these little cubed mango pieces all around on my ice cream. Next, to create the mango sauce, I'm using Fimo Deco Gel this time rather than Sculpey liquid clay, as the Deco Gel is transparent. I poured a small amount of this onto a piece of paper, and then I scraped in some orange chalk pastel shavings to achieve the color that I wanted. I dripped this mixture all over the top of my ice cream, making sure to go over the mango cubes so that they looked like they were part of the mango sauce. Add an eye pin if you would like to make your design into a charm, and then I'll show you how I baked and finished it off at the end of the video. Moving on to the last one, design number 4, I'm going to be showing you how to make this raspberry inspired ice cream. So if I didn't already learn from the mango ice cream, again, I'm trying to swirl 3 colors together to create a really nice berry swirl design. I started off with the colors white, pastel pink, and also a darker pink, rolling each of these balls of polymer clay into a coil and twisting them together. This time around, I made sure to just barely marble the colors in hopes that they wouldn't blend together too much. I shaped my polymer clay into a cone that would really nicely fit inside my piping tip, and then here I am covering the surface with some corn flour so that it doesn't stick to the sides of my piping tip. You can push your clay through the very end with one of your tools and then just cut off the section that you're going to be working with. Like the other designs, I'm adding my liquid clay inside my cone to attach in a piece of scrap clay, and this will give me a nice structure to wrap my ice cream around. The swirled clay on this design did work a little bit better, probably not as dominant as I would have liked, but it's definitely visible this time. For decoration on this ice cream, I am of course going to be adding a raspberry. So starting off with my dark pink polymer clay, I'm shaping it into a little teardrop shape. I'm then adding this piece of clay to the very end of a toothpick so that I can easily manipulate it and move it around without having to actually touch it. I coated the clay in a layer of Sculpey Bacon Bond liquid clay to help adhere these reddish coloured micro marbles. I dipped the polymer clay into the container and I let the micro marbles attach to it, and then I pushed them down slightly to make sure that they were nice and secure. I attached my little raspberry on the side of my ice cream and decided that the design needed a little touch of green. So here I'm creating 2 leaves with some green polymer clay, which I firstly shaped into teardrops, and then I'm just positioning these in front of the raspberry on the design. Go ahead and add an eye pin if you would like to turn your design into a charm, and then it's time to bake our clay ice creams in the oven according to our package's instructions. To make sure that my ice creams or the liquid clay sauce wasn't ruined in the oven by sitting it down flat on my baking tray, I created these little foil stands to place my clay in, seeing as the cones were already pre-baked and hardened anyway. After baking, I took some super glue and I used this to secure the eye pins inside all of my ice creams so that they wouldn't fall out. I then decided to add some UV resin as my glaze, but I did only apply it to the sauce kind of dripping parts of my designs so that they would look shiny in the light, while keeping the other features on the ice cream looking a little bit more realistic. So here are what my finished waffle cone ice creams look like. I'm really happy with how they turned out, and I think the colors look nice and vibrant. They definitely look very summery and delicious. Not gonna lie, I'm kind of wishing that they were real. So if you enjoyed this tutorial, please don't forget to give it a big thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel for lots more crafty videos, and I will see you next time. Bye guys.